Dave finally talks about saving Mr. Banks.
The boys have come up with an idea. I think it's going to make you happy.
You didn't bring me all the way here to tell me that.
Oh, no. I had a wager. I couldn't get you on a ride. I just won $20.
A persnickety Emma Thompson who hates whimsy. I'm so excited I get to use this clip for contrast.
Hi. Storm over yet? Time to make a rainbow?
This movie is a really tough one for me because it puts two of my core beliefs directly at odds. On the one hand, I deeply believe in letting authors have control over their work. Yes, I support fair use in fan projects, but as far as authorized, official extensions of a piece of art goes, I think that collaborators should at least respect the intentions of the original artist, if not defer to that artist completely. On the other hand, I believe that Disney's Mary Poppins is one of the greatest movies of all time. Some of that is nostalgia, but even watching it as an adult, I think it's a very well done, deeply personal, moving story about fatherhood and family and priorities in life, dressed in the guise of a fantastic, whimsical children's adventure with catchy songs. And after having grown up with the movie, I finally read the first Mary Poppins book when I was in 6th grade or something, and I did not think it was as good as the movie. There goes my hipster cred. I remember a couple of poignant moments in it, but mostly I recall a series of short children's story vignettes that didn't have that deeply personal feel for me that the movie had. I mean, that was 15 years ago. Maybe if I reread it now, I'd see it. But at the time, I thought the movie was the much more powerful piece of art. So my point is, P.L. Travers had a deeply personal connection with her books and famously wrote off the movie as a silly piece of fluff lacking in substance. And I had kind of the opposite reaction when I encountered the book. I didn't see the substance in the book, and I would never want to challenge an author on what their work means to them. I mean, obviously, if you were moved to create a work of art, it is something that, had to come out of you, and I may not enjoy it, but who am I to stand in the way of what it means to you as an artist? But this contradiction highlights the problem inherent with making a movie about the making of the movie Mary Poppins. We know Mary Poppins gets made. We know the movie came out, and that's not a happy ending for P.L. Travers, but it's a happy ending for the rest of the human race. So I went into this movie knowing that I wasn't going to be satisfied with the ending of the film, and I decided to just focus on the elements, the individual scenes and sequences and parts as they came together. And really, this is split into two movies. There's the 60s, where Travers' nitpicking is annoying Walt and Don and the Sherman brothers, and of course, B.J. Novak has plenty of experience being frustrated by an insane boss's demands. And then there's the Oscar bait Travers' childhood flashback biopic, where we see the events and things in her childhood that inspired her writings, a la Shakespeare in Love. At least I assume it's like Shakespeare in Love. I only ever saw George Lucas in Love. Now, I don't know anything about Travers' childhood, so I can't speak to the accuracy of this part of the movie, but for me, while there were some things to enjoy here, like Colin Farrell's charming performance as her dad, this was far and away the least interesting part of the movie for me. Emma Thompson as adult Travers is delightfully persnickety, yes, but she brings a depth and a complexity to Travers, whereas the childhood flashbacks, on the other hand, kind of reduce her entire motivation to Rosebud was her dad, paving the way for Uncle Walt to come in and save the day at the end. Really, the most interesting things in the movie, at least for me, was seeing the things that we know actually happened, just watching them play out. The things we know for a fact happened in real life. The stuff we already knew, it's just shown to us in a fun way. Particularly the story meetings. I mean, sure, we don't really see much developed. Almost every time an idea is proposed, it is verbatim the way it ended up in the final movie. So, clearly, they just write very good first drafts in 1960s Disney. But the banter is fun, and the growing frustrations from all parties involved is just delightful. But I think my favorite scene was the scene with Walt and the Shermans in the office at night. I don't know if this actually took place. I don't know if there was actually a night where Walt walked in on the Sherman brothers like this, but I do know how Walt really felt about Feed the Birds. And whether or not this evening was based on a specific event, it was the scene that rang truest to me in the movie. Speaking of which, let's talk about Walt. I get what they were going for, having an American icon play an American icon, rather than go for a more accurate Walt Disney look-alike and sound-alike. They went with someone who would convey the feeling of what it was like. You know, Travers saying these things to Walt Disney would be like someone saying these things to Tom Hanks, American legend.
Tom Hanks sort of is like Walt Disney
Oh,
in a
very
lot of
much
ways.
so.
That there was just this feeling of this is someone incredible and larger than life.
I know that that's the feeling I used to get when I played for Walt Disney. He was a very special human being, and God, he was magical.
Tousle my hair, Mr. Hanks.
Sure thing, son.
And while I didn't buy Tom Hanks as the real Walt Disney, just because I have seen so much footage of the real Walt Disney that probably no imitator would fool me, I did buy the Walt Disney character he was playing. The best comparison I can think of is it's like Will Ferrell's Alex Trebek, you know? It's nothing like the real Alex Trebek, but I buy him as a distinct character that's not just Will Ferrell doing a voice, as a character within the world of these sketches. You know, not to compare film acting to sketch acting, but what you gonna do?
Okay, Tom, let's just go with you.
Well, where are we going?
No, nowhere. Pick a category.
I'll take 600.
In what category?
The Video Daily Double.
I had such high hopes for you.
I like that, for the most part, they weren't afraid to make Walt actually, you know, human. For the most part. They kind of make him Jesus at that one scene at the end where he comes in and gets to the root of all of Travers' psychological problems and saves the day and fixes everything because he is Walt and he is our creator. But other than at the end where he saves Travers from herself, for the most part, they let Walt be human. They let him be frustrated. They let him be rude. They let him be manipulative. And yes, for much of the movie, we're on Walt's side, empathizing with his frustration with this insanely persnickety woman. But for other parts of the movie, we're on Travers' side. The scene where they first meet, you know, by the end of it, we're with him, we feel his frustration with her and just his exhaustion. But at the beginning, when he's trying to put the charm on her and she's not buying it, he's kind of like a snake oil salesman. And what makes Disney and Travers butting heads work is that they're both right about some things and they're both wrong about some things. Of course, in the end, Walt is right about everything and gets his way about everything, but I don't know if there was a way to end this movie that actually was satisfying on any level. Also, why are cartoons such a sticking point? I mean, it's not like I think people need reasons to dislike a medium or genre, but the movie had explanations for every other one of her stipulations. You know, in a movie that loves reducing a character's fears and desires and attitudes to simple flashback bullet points, it really stuck out that animation was the big deal breaker when they don't explain that an animation killed her dog or something. And really, Travers gets petty over animation. Walt tried to sneak it in without her noticing. Nobody comes off well in that scene. The movie had a lot of elements that worked really well, and I did occasionally feel myself getting swept up in the emotion. But it also just had a lot of elements holding it back from being a masterpiece. And while I'm sure I will revisit it occasionally in the future, I'm more likely to just keep watching Mary Poppins over and over. As it stands, Saving Mr. Banks will have to settle for being my second favorite Tom Hanks film set in the 60s with a very brief scene at Disneyland.